So, Good Times with Scar decided to sue some snails, and both him and B-Dubs seem unsure of how this trial will commence. After all, this is an unprecedented trial on the Hermitcraft server, as no one has tried to sue a snail yet. As such, I have compiled this how-to guide for how I think Scar should go about suing the snails. Quick disclaimer, I am not actually a lawyer, nor is anything I am saying coming from a place of expertise. I am simply a Hermitcraft fan hoping to see Scar get some justice on these pesky snails. First, Scar needs to actually sue the snails. Since he already sent the suing papers to B-Dubs, Scar has already completed this step. While I'm not entirely sure if he can tack sentences on later, I would highly suggest it as these snails have been harassing him for a long time, and as such should not go unpunished. Personally, I would sue the snails for harassment, petty theft, money laundering, and criminal mischief, which is actually something you can be sued for. But that's just me. The main thing with tacking on reasons for suing the snails is making sure Scar can compile evidence that corresponds to the sentencing, which seems simple enough until you realize that he is suing snails. Not only will Scar need to gather evidence, he needs to gather evidence that the snails committed the crime and intended on doing those actions. Since the snails aren't very discreet, this first part should be simple. The tricky part comes in the snail's intent. The defense has a very easy argument in saying that the snails can't exactly commit the crime because they are animals. However, there have been real life cases of people suing animals. But the only punishment I can find regarding snails in particular receiving punishments was being excommunicated from the Catholic Church, which is not very helpful for Scar's case. However, it does help him against strawman arguments like this one. Scar will need to gather his evidence to say that the snails intended on committing the crimes, or just bypass the argument by saying B-Dubs decided that Scar can sue them. Therefore, saying they can't be sued would be dishonoring B-Dubs' decisions, or saying that the defense somehow knows better than Your Highness B-Dubs, which would not go well in this courtroom. Once Scar has gathered his evidence, he can make a very easy argument for suing the snails. That would be neglecting one thing. This is a TV show. Well, a YouTube video, but it still boils down to needing to make the trial entertaining. It's one thing to have a good argument, it's another to have that argument be entertaining in a reality show setting. B-Dubs is basically making Hermitcraft Season 10's version of Judge Judy. Scar will need to make an entertaining story if he wants to win this trial. But I think Scar may have already come up with the solution to his problem. Big Ron. You see, the main problem with putting snails on trial is that the snails can't speak, at least not as far as we're aware. They will heavily rely on their lawyer to convey their message for them, and while this could be entertaining, it won't have the defense and prosecutor interactions we will get in other trials. As such, interviewing Big Ron will bridge this gap, as he is the store owner that the snails have been selling their diamonds out of. Personally, I would like to see Scar sue Big Ron because either way, this looks terrible for Ron. If he knew about the snail's behavior of selling Scar's diamonds and willingly let them use his shop, then he is an accomplice and should be sued accordingly. But if he did not know any of it, then he is actively neglecting his shop and can be sued for business negligence. If a victim had injuries or other crimes committed against them in the establishment that were not necessarily the shop owner's fault, the shop owner can still be sued for business negligence, as he should be training his workers and be held responsible for accidents in his workplace. Big Ron was not completing his duties as a shop owner, and at the end of the day, he will need to face the consequences of his actions. Also, maybe interview Jim and Grian. They seem to have an eye on the snails whenever some major mischief pops up, and they say the snails can do whatever they want. Grian and Jem seem to be our main experts on snail shenanigans. Scar and his lawyer will have some pretty solid evidence to convince B-Dubs to bring the hammer of justice down on these pesky snails and their shop owner. Hopefully Scar will form a good argument during his trial. But what do you think? How should Scar go about this trial? Should he even involve other hermits, or does he have enough evidence to argue it by himself?